Hello, reader. Thank you for joining. This is the Christian Readers Community Podcast. On this podcast, we will be discussing with fellow readers and authors. You will never lack for good conversations and recommendations of Christian books. If you're a lover of literary works, fiction and non-fiction, then you have made the right stop here. Thank you for joining us again, and I hope you listen to every podcast that we get to put out for you. Thank you.
Kat Roedell, author, creator, speaker, started as a file clerk and climbed into strategic management. She takes very complex ideas and makes them easy to understand. She uses this tool in her speaking, mentoring, and business planning. Her joy is to see others grow and thrive. Her tagline is "Make the fire higher," because when people work together, they ignite change. Her book, 5 Powerful Tools for Personal Growth, helps people to focus on 5 core areas: forgiveness, prayer, accountability, boundaries, and gratitude, and is filled with stories, analogies, and exercises designed to help people understand the why and how of personal growth.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Christian Readers Community if you've been following us. And today I have with me another amazing lady. She wrote this powerful book, and I would like you to hear directly from her. I read this book and I really learned a lot, and I'm going to be asking her about some of the things I learned for clarification. Welcome to the show, Kat Roedell.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Let's talk about your book. You wrote this beautiful book and it's titled 5 Powerful Tools for Personal Growth. Tell us about the book, 5 Powerful Tools for Personal Growth.
Well, this came out of a mentoring and accountability program that I was working with the first start of the book. I was working with women that were in recovery for alcoholism, and we would do our accountability program to figure out if they were on track for their recovery, the roadmap that they needed to do. And part of what we did afterwards was called Going Deeper. And in that group meeting, what I did is I listened for the common threads and common issues that the women were having in their recovery, and then we tried to address those things to help bring healing and growth for people. I am a business mentor and consultant. I do a lot of business analysis, but I'm also a Christian, and I've been a Christian since I was a very young child. And most of the problems I've found with both those women in recovery groups and also my clients fall within those 5 core areas. And the areas are forgiveness, prayer, boundaries, accountability, and gratitude. And I believe I can't just talk about something and teach you how, what it means. I have to give good, solid, practical ideas of what to do and how to do it. So the book is written in kind of a workshop style. You can still go through it individually, but it works well with groups of other people, because then it kind of forces you to take that time to do the inventories, to learn about who you are and learn about who God is at the same time.
There's a point you wrote in your book that really, really resonated with me, and it's about boundary making. So you made this beautiful points. Could you tell us more? Just a few. I know you mentioned a lot a boundary maker can do, but just give us 2 or 3 crucial ones out of all the points you wrote down in your book.
So I have in the book filtering questions that you can ask yourself to help you make boundaries. And the reason you have those questions is when we're learning how to make boundaries, it's very easy to go back and say, oh, I really don't want to hurt that person's feelings, and I don't want to feel this way about something or that way. And we will roll back on our decision. But if you have qualifying questions that you ask yourself and you write down the answers, then when your boundary is pushed, somebody asks you things about it or wants you to override your boundary, you can look back on what you wrote down and say, this is the reason why I wrote these things. So, for example, I put in the book 2 types of boundaries. You could have personal boundaries, or you could have, now the word just escaped me. You can have burdens on your time. Somebody wants you to do something for them. Those kind of activity-based boundaries. And a personal boundary, you might ask, does this person treat me differently than they treat other people? Because sometimes you'll find that you're being treated much differently than somebody else, and you need to establish a boundary because that person that's treating you differently isn't considering who you are. And then next question would be is, do they respect my no? I've had people in my life where I've told them no, and they just keep pushing and pushing and pushing to get their own way. And God does not manipulate us, coerce us, bully us, or control us. So we should not be manipulated, controlled, bullied, or coerced by other people, especially if they say that they're a man or a woman of God, because they're acting counter to the Spirit of God when they're doing those things. So establishing personal boundaries is about making sure that you don't get bullied, you don't get manipulated, you don't get controlled, and you don't get coerced or have lots of pressure put on you to change your mind. And then the assistive boundaries, I figured out the word again. Those are things where people want you to spend a lot of your time, energy, or resources to help them do something that they want. And again, you don't want to have that place where they're trying to manipulate you or control you into getting these things. But if you understand who you are, what your purpose in life is, what your passion is, and whether or not it adds to your resource stream, and whether or not it brings you joy, you answer yes to all of those questions, then it's clearly something that you can step into because it's not going to be burdensome to you. But if you don't want to step into anything, you can just say no. And if you've got your intentions written down, your ideas about those things written down, then it's easy to understand within yourself why you said it. Now, it's also important when you write down your boundaries and write down your answers, you don't have to justify those to anybody. Your no should be no, your yes will be yes, and you don't have to explain to anybody else why you made those decisions. It's not really their business. And if you really feel on an assistive boundary, for example, that you should help for a while, then set a deadline date and say, I can work on this for 40 hours or I can work on this for 4 weeks. But at the end of this date, this is not what I'm called to do. You're going to have to find somebody to replace me. And God will honor that. And when we walk into places where we don't belong, then we're standing in somebody else's way sometimes. So we have to be certain to let that space be open so God can put the person in place that needs to be in place.
Someone listening might be saying, easier said than done. These are the people who are probably finding it very difficult to say no. As a matter of fact, when they say no to a boundary breaker, they'll be like, it feels like they're going against everything their conscience or everything they believe is right. So what are the actionable steps that people in this situation can start with for those who are unable to say no?
Right. Well, the first thing that you have to realize is that you are the one that gets to establish the boundaries. And you need to find the ways to remind yourself that you've got them established and it's okay to enforce them. In my book, I have questions that you can use to read and write down the answer to help you establish personal boundaries for people and also assistive boundaries for when they want your time or energy. The first thing you need to know is that no means that you're not obligated, you're not owning it, and it's not optional. So if anybody tries to break your boundaries, you have to remember those 3 things about no. So it's okay to have no's in your life because they help you structure the boundary. So for personal boundaries, some of the questions are they treating me differently from other people? Do they argue with me or try to change my mind when I say no? Do I feel manipulated or bullied? Are they being disrespectful of my time, energy, talents, or reserves or resources? Do they drain my energy? And do I find myself avoiding their phone calls or texts or dreading their visits or other interactions? So if you're answering yes to all of these questions and you're thinking about a specific person, you know that you need to create some boundaries because these are all red flags or situations that you need to realize are part of having a healthy relationship with someone. We shouldn't be in a relationship with somebody who drains our energy, for example, or they don't respect our time or our resources. So once you write down the answers why you said yes, write down some examples of why you said yes for the personal boundaries, then you can set up time frames that you could, if you don't want to cut that person off entirely, you decide when I go to visit this person or I have them come over, it will only be for a half an hour. I've already set the time, or if I've got to go to this party and this person is there, I'm only going to be there for an hour. After that, I'm going to leave. I also recommend bringing somebody along with you to those meetings because people who behave badly personally on one-to-one conversations are a little bit more likely to be nice when other people are around. So if you have to meet with somebody that you need to establish a boundary with, bring somebody else along with you. And then if you get a text from them or a letter from them or a note, just wait before you answer that and make sure that when you give an answer, you don't justify your answer. You don't have to tell people the reason why you're saying no. You just need to say, no, I can't do that. Thank you for asking, and move on from there. So a lot of times we have to develop a boundary because we want to please people. And in order to let go of that people pleasing, we have to know that we're right in ourselves, that we are healthy and whole, and we're making good decisions about our life and the things that we want to do in our life. And we don't need somebody trying to control us. God only collaborates with us. He doesn't manipulate us, control us, coerce us, or bully us. So if somebody says they're of God, but they do those 4 things, they manipulate us, or they try to control us, or they try to coerce us, or force us into making a decision, or to bully us, then you know that they're not of God, or they're not acting in God's spirit at that point in time. So you don't have to allow those things in your life because we're given free will. And we don't need to be treated poorly because somebody else wants to put their free will on top of ours. Just because it's good doesn't mean it's God.
Just because it's good doesn't mean it's God. And I've seen something over the years, and that's the fact that so many people, they can easily say no to an outsider, but find it very difficult to say no to those whom they are, somehow emotionally attached to. Say a family member, friends, close friends, your parents, loved ones, spouses. And it's very difficult. And I think that's actually where we find most of these boundary breakers. Do you agree?
I agree, because we take the other person for granted sometimes.
Yeah.
And just because we're related to somebody doesn't mean that they're a mature person, or that they're a kind person, or that they're a good person. That just means that we happen to be born into the same family with them. Relationships, for example, especially in a marital relationship, sometimes people hide who they are until you're into the relationship so deep that then they start to expose the real person that they are. And that's a really challenging place, because, again, we're not supposed to be manipulated or controlled. That's not what Holy Spirit does with us. God empowers us to become exactly who we're called to be in Him. And if other people are trying to control us and have us do exactly what they want and be their need fulfiller, we're standing in the way of God, because God supplies all the needs. We're not called to supply everybody else's needs. We're called to be obedient to God. So when we're in a relationship and it turns to this point where we realize that they're not being the nicest people in the world for us, then I would advocate, if you can, get into counseling with this person. If they don't want to go into counseling, then you get into counseling for yourself, and you learn how to recognize the signs, how to understand that if somebody is abusing you, or they've abandoned you emotionally, or they're in active addiction, or they're in adultery. Those are 5 serious areas that we really have to consider if we need to still be in that relationship. If it can't, God can do anything. He can restore anything, but we have to work our part of it to make it healthy for both people that are in that relationship. And it's very, very hard to do. I know. I've done it before. I've had to do it before, and counseling didn't work, and talking didn't work, and compromising didn't work. And, at some point, God said, you can take care of you and you can take care of your children, but you're not responsible for this other person. You need to let it go and let me deal with it. And it was, like I said, it was very hard. It went against my grain and what I believed in the Bible. But in that case, there was alcoholism, there was adultery, there was abandonment, and there was verbal abuse. And so all 4 of those things were in that place, and I had to step out and trust in God and walk away. And I have blossomed hugely since that point in time. I've grown through these areas. I've learned how to establish boundaries. I did a lot of work on myself. I still pray for that person every day. I still care about that person, but I care more about me being the right person I'm called to be in the eyes of God and being obedient to God than I do about being in a relationship with somebody who isn't capable of being in a relationship.
I highly recommend this book to everyone listening to us right now. It's a very helpful book, and it's nice for both workplaces and for individuals. So thank you so much, Kat. Before we go, if someone wants to get this book, where would they be able to do that?
Well, it is available on Amazon.com. 5 Powerful Tools for Personal Growth. And also, I have some copies myself that I can ship. Those would be available via CatRoedell.com. And I have those signed with an inscription, so the price is a little bit higher than if you buy it through Amazon. But either way, it is available. It's also at all the major booksellers, and my publisher is Trilogy Publishing, which is a subsidiary of TBN, the Trinity Broadcast Network. So we've got a good spread of where it is at in the marketplace.
Okay, thank you so much. Then what about, do you have say social media, mailing list where anyone can subscribe, or social media where anyone can look you up?
Yeah, they can go to CatRoedell.com and sign up for my mailing list. I also have an online shop if anybody needs some notebooks or some inspiration art that I've painted is on there too. So, but when you sign up for the mailing list, I promise I'll get something out. I'm still working in this, learning how to be doing a newsletter. It's something I've always explained to my clients. I know how it should be done, but I haven't stepped into it myself. So just for me, this is just as much a journey as I would believe the book is for anybody else, because it's like teaching me to go to the next level and step into this next part, and believing in myself enough and in the Holy Spirit and God that I'm going to follow what he says to do and do the right things for this, to move myself forward and to move other people forward. So
are you going to write again, or is this just supposed to be a one-time thing?
My next book I'm working on is called So You Want to Start a Church, Foundations for Spiritual Maturity and Leadership. And again, God's having me do the work as well as write the book. I just started a new 5-fold ministry training center. Sunday was our opening day. So we are following an apostolic, prophetic, evangelistic, pastoral, and training, teaching. So we have different people doing different parts and pieces and going out and being the hands and feet of Christ to the people around us in our neighborhood and our community.
That title sounds intriguing. Yeah.
Yes, we're going to be on Facebook Live as soon as we get enough people to like us. So Faith Freedom Fellowship is the name of the training center. You can find it on Facebook. If you want to join and like it, you're more than welcome to.
Okay. All right. No problems. Thank you so much, Kat Roedell, for joining me. This has been a wonderful conversation with you, and I hope that when your next book, releases, you'd come back to tell us about it.
Okay, I will do that.
Because I would definitely love to have you back. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you very much, everyone, for listening. Glad you got this, and I'll be back again. So until I come your way again next time, saying stay safe, stay blessed, and bye-bye, everyone.